Yabba dabba doo!
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today, we're going to be speaking about the brand new Double-A Columbus Clingstones, who play in Columbus, Georgia, with their brand new peach-themed identity. Later on in this episode, I will be speaking with designer Dan Simon of Studio Simon, who created the brand. I'll be speaking with Steve Ela of Ela Family Farms in Colorado about peaches. And Dan Simon will be back with one of his Studio Simon Stumper trivia questions. Right now, I am so pleased to welcome the general manager of the Columbus Clingstones, the brand new Columbus Clingstones in Columbus, Georgia, Pete Lavin. Pete, good morning. How are you doing?
Great, Paul. How are you today?
I am great. I'm doing really well. I'm very excited to be talking about this brand new brand created by Dan Simon. The Mississippi Braves season just wrapped up, and you'll be moving to Columbus, Georgia for the 2025 season. Obviously, this new brand made something of a splash in recent weeks. I'm going to jump in with the very most basic of questions. How come a team in Columbus, Georgia is called the Columbus Clingstones?
Well, it comes from the great mind of Dan Simon, and I was privileged to start working with Dan and Peter Freund and everybody at Diamond Baseball on this project back in late February, I believe, and just loved the concept from the start. I mean, Georgia being the peach state. Of course, like everybody else, I needed a little education on the clingstone, but quickly found out there's two main brands of peaches that are grown in the state of Georgia: the clingstone and the freestone. And the clingstone gets its name because it clings to the pit of the peach. So I loved that definition when I found out, because that's what we're going to do here. We're going to be stubborn, just like the clingstone peach, and cling to the community here, because they've had a lot of incarnations of minor league baseball and amateur baseball here, but we're here to stay. And beyond that, the color peach. I mean, that being the main color of the brand, the identity. Nobody's ever done that, so we're unique right from the get-go.
It's funny when you talk about the clingstones, because I wasn't really familiar with that term. My peach vernacular is not fully developed, fully fleshed out, I guess. And but you can picture it, right? Like, sometimes when you cut a peach open and it just pulls right off the pit there, and it's it's real easy to work with. Whereas the clingstone, if you're eating a peach, clingstones are kind of frustrating, right? Like it's a stubborn kind of peach. I'm sure that's part of the identity, right? Like, I sometimes think people think of peaches as kind of vulnerable. They sort of bruise easily. They've got like that narrow window of when they're sort of just right. But the clingstone as a sports mascot is maybe a little is better than your average peach, I guess, when it comes to sports mascots. Was that part of the thinking? Was like, this isn't just your average vulnerable peach. This is like a stubborn, annoying peach.
Absolutely. I mean, granted, it's cute and it's tasty, just like the peach you want to find at the supermarket, but it's also tough and it's stubborn, like you said, and that's how our team's going to play on the field. That's how the Braves affiliates always play. So and it's interesting. Last week after the reveal, I was back in Mississippi. And the guys, the Double-A players, immediately they saw the reveal too. We had to keep it a secret from them all season, and they loved it. They're like, "Wow, the great name, great colors. This is different. This is not run of the mill. This is gonna be cool." A lot of them can't wait to don the peach jerseys.
You have been with the team. How long have you been with this franchise with the Mississippi Braves?
I've been with the Mississippi Braves. It's always weird. Do you count COVID season? Do you not? But I've
Oh, yeah.
been there since 2019, so I've got 6 seasons, 6 years.
So you have, a certain amount of time with this team. You'll be moving with the franchise to Columbus, having been the last holdout in the Braves sort of suite of affiliates there, named for the parent club. And the Braves used to have a lot of teams named for the parent clubs, and this was the last one after the Rome emperors made that switch. What is that like for you as someone who has been involved with a team that was named for its parent club, had an identity that was already sort of established in the branding world. Obviously, the Atlanta Braves have had a lot of success, so there's a lot of following of that team and a lot of brand equity in that Braves brand. To
Mhm.
now going to a new town with a brand new brand that is, going to have to be established on its own in its own community. What is that challenge for you?
Well, there's always a great amount of pride with associated with the Braves name, especially being in Braves country. Mississippi was Braves country, so you can imagine being here in Columbus an hour and a half from Atlanta. It's times 100 as far as Braves loyalties here. But in this day and age, and you've seen with our predecessors, with Gwinnett, and then more recently Rome, with the identity changes, how successfully those have gone. And above all else, it's we've had tremendous support from Atlanta, from the top down, on choosing our own identities, forging our own identities within the communities we play in. It's always the the overwhelming tone of our play on the field and in the clubhouse and so on, and our fan base is that these are the Atlanta Braves players. So we'll always have that to lean on, but to create our own identity and just be in sync with our community in a unique way, not just locally but nationally and throughout the region is definitely a plus.
Well, I've said some version of this a number of times on this podcast. I'm a fan of the Philadelphia Phillies, grew up in that area, went to school in Richmond, Virginia, lived there for about 10 years where the Richmond Braves were playing. When I was there, that was before the Flying Squirrels, and I used to go to Richmond Braves games all the time. Never really developed an emotional relationship with that team just because, the Braves and the Phillies are rivals on the field, and so because Richmond had that Braves branding, I never could really get my head around like, hey, go Braves. When that team moved to Gwinnett and eventually became the Stripers, when Rome rebranded as the Emperors, I absolutely snatched up some gear, right? Like that was, I don't mind wearing a Gwinnett Stripers shirt. I don't mind wearing a Rome Emperors cap in spite of that, rivalry of the major league clubs. I am way more likely to own some Columbus Clingstones gear than I am ever to have owned Mississippi Braves gear. So it's certainly, I've said this before on this podcast, it certainly will work on me. But speaking of that Clingstones brand, it's been out for, at the time of this recording, a little bit over a week now, and I'm curious to know how it's been received. What's the word on the street in Columbus?
There was tremendous excitement. There was a lot of buzz beforehand, before the big reveal, which we did on Friday, September 6th, along with a drone show
Oh
following
yeah.
the ever drone show in the city of Columbus. But and you've seen a lot of these reveals where it's always a mix, and online, you had a lot of people putting their opinions out there. But I will say people that I've known, people that have contacted me directly love the name. They love the colors, they love the logo. Some, definitely they didn't know what a Clingstone was. Even the
Yeah.
people that love the brand, they had to go look it up, just like I did at first. So it's been interesting. If you follow social media, you've seen, some of the people that don't like it, of course, though they're often the first ones to put their opinions out there. But, we've seen it from the time we announced it at the reveal, the line at the merchandise stand there at the convention center where we had the event was huge, an immediate, and our pop-up store here at our downtown offices has been a constant flow. And one of the fun things about it is the community is going to be allowed to or is going to be charged with by us to name the mascot.
Okay.
The mascot that's going to be represented at the stadium and in the community. So we're going to roll that out here in probably the next week or two.
That's actually funny that you would say that because Dan and I, when we were speaking for the sports logos article, and obviously, well, I'll talk to Dan next here. Dan has a specific name that he is advocating for. Has he told you what that name is?
I think he's kept it a secret to me. He was involved in the mascot process, but if you're able to reveal, I can't wait to hear it.
I'm gonna leave that to Dan in the next segment here, but
Okay.
I'll bleep it out here and then I'll leave it to Dan. But the name that Dan is interested in seeing, the one that he's going to submit to the team contest is
Okay, I like it. Yeah, well, Dan has an equal vote just like everybody, I guess. So we'll take it into consideration.
well, it'll be the most important vote to happen in the state of Georgia in the coming months, I'm sure. So it's
No doubt.
in terms of just establishing this brand. There wasn't a name the team contest. You said you worked directly with Dan on that. The fans will be involved in naming the mascot. Were there other considerations? Were there other things that other avenues that you explored related to Columbus, or was it always peaches right from the get-go?
From the moment I became involved, there are a few that are all peach related.
Mhm.
Dan might have had a larger roster to begin with, but I think he nailed it on the head when we went in this direction because I didn't even realize that it's been 40 years since there's been professional team with peach, any sort of peach in their main identity. There was the Macon Peaches back in 1983, I believe, a Pirates affiliate, and so to bring that back in the state of Georgia. I think was a win-win, and matching it with the colors, especially with the colors we're going to feature on the field for the first time. It's going to be slightly revolutionary. And, just like, the Allman Brothers with their Eat a Peach album, it's synonymous with the state of Georgia.
So Ben Hill with minor league baseball is very clever with words, terrific writer, really good with the puns, and so I always enjoy reading his recaps of brand announcements. He started his it might have even been the headline, or at least it was the first sentence of the article that he wrote about the new brand with Clingstones, meet the Clingstones. I had not thought of that when I saw that, but obviously there is a rhyme with Flintstones there. Had that occurred to you before Ben Hill wrote that? Is that something you guys might play on?
The correlation for sure had, with the two syllables and the stones. And yeah, Dan and I have talked about that correlation. You never know what might happen in the future, but there's so much you can do with the Clingstones name. We're already, putting out there, get clingy with some season tickets for the inaugural season. You have the Stones part of it.
Yeah.
We hope that becomes part of the vernacular here in Columbus. Okay, we going. Who's all going to the Stones game tonight? We feel like that's going to take on a life of its own as well.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot to play with. Are there any names for like the team store, or anything clever that you're doing with Peaches or Clingstone, anything like that you can share now?
Oh yeah, we'll be shameless when it's all said and done. If you go online, our team store is the Orchard
Nice.
online. We look to have that transfer over to the official team store when we move into the stadium. We've played with the kids zone possibly being the Peach Pit, and there'll be special concession items. Beverages
Nice.
related to the peach that we can't wait to roll out. So it's so much you can do with it. It's a real privilege to have a peach as a logo, as I've realized quickly.
All right, last question for you. The Fort Wayne Tin Caps obviously have an Apple themed identity because of Johnny Appleseed and his relationship to that part of the country. One of the things that the Tin Caps do is they serve in a helmet apple pie with vanilla ice cream. I have to know, as an aficionado of both ice cream and ice cream helmets, will you be serving peach pie, possibly a la mode, in an ice cream helmet at the ballpark?
Well, I know peach cobbler has already been discussed, and peach pie. I don't think you can go wrong there. Peach shakes, peach bellinis. It's we're fortunate to be able to utilize the peach at our stadium in a unique way, and Man, when you mention a helmet like that, that just, makes me wish it was April 15th already, Paul.
Me too. Me too. Pete, this has been a ton of fun. I'm so excited to see this brand on the field. Obviously, I've been enjoying the reception to it already. I know people want to go get some Clingstones gear out there. Where can they go to get some new merch?
www.clingstones.com. You can find our online store right there, The Orchard.
That is awesome and easy to find. Clingstones.com. Pete, thank you so much. This has been fun. Best of luck ramping up to April 15 during the off season here. Thanks again for making time for me.
Thank you, Paul. Enjoyed it.
All right, everyone. I am so pleased to welcome back to the podcast my good friend and designer extraordinaire, elite minor league baseball designer Dan Simon, to talk about one of his newest creations, the Columbus Clingstones. Dan, good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic.
Dan, this is a really fun brand, and it is based on a peach, which offers all sorts of opportunities for color usage. And obviously, you created this character. The character is the centerpiece of the brand. And so I'd love to know in creating a baseball mascot out of a peach, where'd you start? What were the considerations? Any challenges along the way?
I wouldn't say, well, there was a challenge with this brand identity, but not in creating the character. We can get back to that challenge later, but since you've asked about the character, you know, we've done we in the sports branding and more specifically minor league baseball branding fraternity have done numerous characters with a ball or something else, some other round or semi-spherical object as a head. And I suppose that is where one might go with this as well, but I didn't want to do that. Not all that long ago, earlier this year, I was the guest on your podcast for the Lexington Legends, and that was, maybe we even talked about the same thing on that episode, but that character has Mighty Lex is what he ended up being named. Uh, his head and body are the ball. It's not a ball head on a body. His head and body are the ball, and I wanted to do that same thing with this peach. And so that's the direction I went with it. And I love the way this little guy came out.
You called him this little guy. I will tell you that Pete Lavin and I had this conversation already. I did mention what you wanted the name of this mascot to be, but I bleeped it out. I wanted to leave it to you whether you wanted to declare publicly on this podcast what you want the name of this mascot to be that will likely go to a fan vote. Would you care to share what your vote is going to be for in the name the mascot contest?
I I will dare to share.
All right.
Uh, when I'm working on a brand identity, if I have some thoughts about potential names for the character and or the mascot, I will share those thoughts with the team. I can tell you back when I was doing the Hillsborough Hops identity, my idea for the name of that character was Roy Hops, like in The Natural.
Yeah. Great.
Ultimately, they went with Barley. So
Which that
that's
character is not.
exactly. But still, it's fine with me. When we were doing the Kannapolis Cannonballers,
Mm.
I felt that the name of this character needed to be Boomer. I recommended that to the team. Ultimately, he got that. That is the name that they gave him, but I believe it went to a fan again, a call for submissions from fans, and I think that might have been the number one name. But anyway, back to
Yeah,
what
you're
I,
keeping us in so much suspense here, Dan.
well, I'm kind of, I like to pull back the curtain whenever I can and let the listeners like hear some stories about what happens in us, during the sports branding process. But for this one, we'll get right to it now. Fuzzy.
Fuzzy would be great. Would be great. It speaks very much to a peach, and I wonder if Fuzzy Zeller, the golfer, is from Georgia. There's a good chance he's from Georgia, don't you think?
It's a 1 in 50 chance.
You know what? It's interesting that you bring up the Lexington Legends because when you and I spoke, I was in the Vancouver airport on my way back from Japan, and you and I spoke by phone so that I could get some quotes for you for the sportslogos.net article that I wrote about this team. And I asked you to describe the character, and you ultimately said, "You know what? I'm going to leave that to everyone else to do." You said I created this character and he's out there in the world. I'm going to leave it to everyone else to describe. It wasn't until you mentioned Mighty Lex of the Lexington Legends and I went and I sort of looked at that character compared to this, could be Fuzzy. And I noticed that when I'm looking at Fuzzy, I'm just going to call him Fuzzy Dan. We're just going to go with that until we're told otherwise. But when I look at Fuzzy, he's got a much more youthful look about him, and there's almost like an innocence to him, right? Like he's got his cap on sideways, and he's got the bat over his shoulder, or he's standing there with his hand on his hip, and just I don't know. He looks youthful and kind of innocent to me, especially as compared to like the winking mustachioed Mighty Lex, who looks like he knows something that you don't. Youthful innocence in this logo, is it something that was intentional, or is it just a happenstance of the creation of this character?
It it was intentional, and I can actually be real specific about this. I wanted him to have a look that said that in his what the way he lives, what's in his mind, the way he feels, the look is everything's peachy. And that was really the driving force behind the look I was trying to create for him. And I think I I was able to achieve that.
Based on my assessment, I would say that you were, given that I just said that. Yeah, he's just got this sweet, innocent, you talk about, everyone talks about how easily bruised peaches are, and there's a certain sort of vulnerability there. This character does look a little vulnerable, right? Like he's the first time he learns a hard truth about life, it's going to be devastating. But in the meantime, we're all going to the dirt field to play some stickball or something. That's the sense that I get from him. He's this is a youthful, innocent character, and I enjoy that very much. It's got a purity about it, a baseball purity about it.
Well, it's purity is good, fresh, pure produce.
Peachy goodness. So we're talking about peaches a little bit here, obviously, but this is a specific kind of peach, and it's not necessarily a term that everyone is familiar with. And in fact, you told me it was one that you were not necessarily familiar with. I'm interested in the fact that that it's not the Columbus Peaches, which would be a little on the nose for minor league baseball these days. That the team went with Clingstones as its identifier for you, and we're going to do something with peaches, but what's it going to be? You were about as involved with this brand as a designer can be, right? Like you were involved with the naming of the team itself, not just they didn't come to you with a name already in place. And where does Clingstones come from, and why is that the name that the team landed on?
I'm gonna tell all of you something that you wouldn't otherwise know. This name actually came up when I was branding another team
Mm.
before the Clingstones. And actually, the name I first came up with was the Peachy Keens. And we were actually designing with that name.
Oh.
Uh, And that was for this other team. I don't want to say what the other team was.
It was the St. Louis Cardinals, wasn't
Oh, darn. You,
it? Gotcha.
um, so anyway, I just still love the idea. So didn't get used for that team. That identity has been unveiled already, and it will not get used for that team. When it was determined that the Mississippi Braves were going to be moving to Columbus, Georgia, we just immediately honed in on a peach themed identity, but they didn't want to use the name Peachy Keens.
Mm.
So I went back to doing my peach research. And that's when I determined that there are two kinds of peaches, clingstones and freestones. It's been established that the flesh of the peach of a clingstone is harder to get off the stone or pit than a freestone, where that flesh falls away much more easily. And the bottom line of how did that end up being chosen for the name of the team? It was either Freestones or Clingstones. Clingstones just sounds a little bit cooler, and it's I saw one comment when this identity was unveiled. The comments were pretty positive. One comment, it was on sportslogos.net in the comments section,
Oh, no
and
kidding.
somebody commented about they should have just named the team the Peaches. Nobody knows what a clingstone is. Well, now you know. It's like, what's
Right.
wrong with learning something new? And frankly, clingstones is a more fun name than peaches.
It's true. It's absolutely true. So in terms of alternate brands, there are various versions of this character. And then there's one roundel where you've got a baseball bat as tree trunk, and then you've got baseballs, like sort of peachy colored baseballs, as peaches in a peach tree, essentially. And that's sort of it for inspiration for secondary marks. How come you chose to focus on the character so much in the secondary marks rather than sort of ancillary peach themed things?
Well, that goes back to the challenges of this brand identity. As cool and as fun as a direction that peaches are, boy, that my English was not very good there. But one of the drawbacks to the peach theme is that it doesn't really lend itself well to additional ideas for secondary logos. With peaches, I always use pirates as an example of identities I've done where there was a wealth of options for secondary logos. With pirates, you've got, the pirate, him or herself. You've got pirate hat, you have a bandana, you've got swords, you've got daggers, you've got pirate ships, you've got parrot, you've got skulls, bones, etc., etc. There's ship's wheels. I could go on a little bit longer, but you get the. I hope you get the point. With peaches, are there other things that you think of with peaches? Sure, I think of a peach basket. I think of peach pie. Then you get into other things that you could do with peaches, canned peaches, peach ice cream, etc. But none of that stuff really lent itself well to a secondary logo. I tried something with the peach basket, and I could have executed that, but I've got a thumbnail sketch of it, which is a peach basket filled with baseballs and/or peaches, but it just really didn't make for a particularly compelling logo. So what we did is we just leaned into the character. There's two different poses for him or it. Who knows if it's a he or a she? There's a head only version, even though we talked earlier about how his head and body are the peach. There's also a head only version because we wanted that to have as for secondary usages. But then I needed to flesh things out a little bit more, so I created that roundel that you described. There's also And there's, multiple word marks. Well, there's Columbus word mark, a Clingstones word mark, and then there's different versions of that in different colors. There's 3-color versions of it, 2-color versions of it, 1-color versions of it, plus an inaugural season logo. So there was still plenty of assets I was able to deliver to the team for their merchandise and marketing usages.
You mentioned assets, which brings me to an important and my final question, which is the peach emoji is often associated with butts. We'll just cut right to it. Peach emojis equal butts in the parlance of today's texting youth. How much of a point of conversation was that? Did it come up that, hey, there's this association out there in the world of peaches with butts?
Are you suggesting that it would be a questionable decision to do a brand identity where we anthropomorphize an eggplant?
I I desperately want to see it, Dan. I absolutely, and there's probably all sorts of emojis out there that we could turn into some Urban Dictionary friendly mascots here. So, but yes, that's funny. I mean, right? There's a lot out there. Like there's a lot of emojis that have to do with that. But you know, peaches equals butts so far as many people are concerned.
It did come up, but as far as things that are not suitable for brand identities, that concern was not very high on didn't move the needle to the problematic side of the meter, if you will, and even if you won't. So yeah, it came up, but of all the concerns, that's a pretty innocuous one.
It does seem like it opens the door to some really great theme nights or some alternate brands down the line maybe, but it seems like there's a world of possibilities with Clingstones and butts down the line.
From your lips to the front office's ears, let's see what they can come up with along those lines. I'm sure they're big on butts.
Well, hopefully they wouldn't lie about that. Maybe they even couldn't. Dan, this obviously has been so much fun. I'm so grateful to get to talk to you about the work that you do. You're so prolific in the world of minor league baseball, so it's a pleasure for me to get to talk to you every single week, especially when there's a brand new identity that has rocked the minor league baseball world. Guess what? You're going to be back later on in this episode with one of your Studio Simon Stumpers. So this is not goodbye, but merely fare thee well. And we'll see you in a few short moments back here on this podcast.
As a French minor in college, if I remember correctly from the French I took in high school, you're the French minor in college. I should say to you, instead of au revoir, I should say a bientôt, correct?
A bientôt is, basically see you soon. Au revoir is until we see each other again. So even that is appropriate. So either way, I'll see you soon, Dan.
Au revoir, a bientôt.
Oh, it's perfect. All right, everyone, welcome back. I am at the Fort Collins, Colorado Farmers Market every week. It's a great farmers market. I am with Steve Ela of Ela Farms.
Ela Family Farms.
Ela Family Farms. And Ela Family Farms is important because Steve is the 4th generation purveyor of Ela Family Farms. First of all, how's the farmers market going? I pulled you away from a stand that has been busy for like 3 hours here.
It's a good market. Yeah, we like Fort Collins. It's a great market. It's a grower-only market, so everybody sells only what they grow, just like we do, and it's busy, and we see customers week after week. It's just cool.
I bought a bunch of fruit here earlier, brought it home, ate some, came back, and you're still busy here, so I appreciate you taking a minute away from
Absolutely.
the stand here. I showed you this morning the Columbus Clingstones logo, and you had not seen that before. You got a good laugh out of it. What made you laugh about it?
It made me laugh because, you know, as we sell peaches through the season, the first question is always, are these freestones? Because when you cut the peach in half, a freestone means you cut it in half and it just comes right away from the pit. And the clingier peaches don't come off the pit, so you almost have to slice them to get them loose. And early season peaches tend to be more clingy, the later season peaches more freestone. And so it just cracked me up that you would actually name a team after what is, you know, a type of peach.
So now you're actually breaking some news to me here. Can the same variety of peach be both a clingstone and a freestone?
Nope, different varieties.
Oh, okay.
So each variety picks for about a week or 10 days.
Okay.
But we select varieties both on flavor, but then on timing. So they all bloom at the same time.
All right.
But then different varieties will pick later or earlier, and the earlier varieties just tend to be more clingy. And I don't actually know the reason for that, except that it's just kind of the way it is.
So you're here in Colorado, the Columbus Clingstones, they're in Georgia, and Georgia, the peach state, I guess. Even though, well, we'll get into this later in the episode, but what's notable about the Colorado peach as compared to peaches in other parts of the country?
Well, Western Colorado Palisade peaches are famous, and
Yes.
part of the reason was back in the 20s, that was an industry there, and they tended to grow one variety, and it was Alberta peaches. And so they would have 2 weeks where they would just flood the national market with peaches, and literally the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad would amass rail cars in Grand Junction waiting for the peach harvest. So they would pick them, they would literally, in the winter, they would harvest ice up in Leadville, Colorado, up in the mountains, take it down to Grand Junction, put it in ice houses and, you know, sawdust and everything, and store it. And then they would load the peaches in the rail cars, ice them down, because there was no refrigeration at that point.
Yeah.
And then they'd run them over to Denver, they'd re-ice them, and then they'd go to All Points East. And the Colorado peach won the Chicago World's Fair, and I can't remember what year, 1930 something. And it's partly our altitude. You know, we've got this huge desert climate of where we're hot during the day and cool at night, and it just brings out the sugars and the sweetness and everything. And so that's kind of the history of where the Palisade peach came from, but we're still really well known. You look on the national map, we don't even show up, but yet it's a multi-million-dollar industry in this area.
Interesting. What are the questions you get when people come to you here at the market every week? What are the questions you're getting about peaches?
I mean, one is it a freestone or a cling?
All right.
The other is even though you see peaches in the store and everything is a peach, each variety has like a subtle taste nuance.
Okay.
And they're subtle. I mean, so you can still just call them all peach and be fine. But like some are more straight sweet, some are sweet with a little bit of acid. And so people ask like, oh, what's the difference between this variety and that variety?
Yeah.
And then we give lots of tastes because your taste buds are the best. Of what you like versus what I like.
Right.
And then just when were they picked? How's the crop? How much longer are you going to have peaches? Especially the last 3 or 4 weeks as we get towards the end of the season, people start to panic.
They get a little frantic. I've seen that here. How many peaches do you sell in a season?
Gosh, we probably grow around 200,000 or 300,000 pounds of peaches.
Wow. 200,000 or 300,000 pounds of peaches. That's amazing.
And we're a small family farm,
right?
So you can imagine what the big guys do. But
okay, so this team is called the Clingstones. Clingstone peaches are a little annoying, aren't they? What's the point of a Clingstone peach?
Well, the point is they also have great flavor.
Okay.
So and like you say, it's sometimes is the timing of the season. So it's not. They're a little annoying, but they're still great early in the season. And they taste great. So for slicing, it really doesn't make a big difference.
Okay.
If you want the county fair perfect half that you're going to put in the canning jar to win the blue ribbon,
right?
The master champion, then you want the freestone. And this would have been my mother. But if you're just going to slice them up and put them in the jar so you can eat them or freeze them. It doesn't matter a whole lot.
Well, you were sort of getting at my next question, which was, is there a different use for a clingstone versus a freestone?
Not a lot. I mean,
okay.
And if you want to dive into the deep trivia, every peach we grow as a nursery is classified as a freestone.
Okay.
Because there are the cling peaches, which are grown a lot in California, and I actually don't know about Georgia, that are used for processing. So like the peaches you buy in a can at the store, those are cling peaches.
Okay.
And so that is kind of a different class, and they are actually bred to be, so when you can them, they retain their texture, so they're firm. So that's a special variety. So all the ones we grow are actually technically freestones, even though they cling on the pit.
Okay.
So
all right.
So all the ones we grow are meant to be fresh, eaten fresh. I mean, they can be processed for sure, and we have a lot of people that do that. But they're grown to be eaten, melt in your mouth. And the pro tip is, if you're eating a peach standing up, it's not a good peach. As soon as you eat it, you should be bent over so that the juice isn't running down the front of your shirt. So that right there is, if you're standing straight up, somebody screwed up.
I am always learning something on this. I'm seeing right here on the boxes, Ela Family Farms since 1907. What's that? You said you're fourth generation. Obviously, you grew up with it. You're in it now. You're deep into it now. What does that mean to you to be a purveyor of organic? I see all the signs over here say organic. What does it mean to you personally to be involved with this industry and to be a purveyor of fresh organic fruit and vegetables?
Oh, it's first of all, it's really hard work. And it is stressful. I mean, we have a lot of spring frosts. Nothing is a given. Mother Nature's Mother Nature. But I'm sure most baseball teams can understand the vagaries of winning streaks and losing streaks. So, it's something I enjoy. I love working with perennials, so trees, versus like a row crop that's here and gone. Trees to me feel kind of like kids. And I'm definitely more of a plant person than an animal person. So I'm not good with livestock.
All right.
You want to let those people do. But it's also just nice to see, from bloom to, the small peaches on the tree to where they're suddenly ripe and luscious. And like the first block we picked is right by our house, and you can literally walk out in the yard and smell them. And you're like, we're about 3 or 4 days away from picking.
All right.
And that's just, I don't know, it's just kind of, and it's nice to see people actually get good fruit, because so often in the store you buy a piece of fruit and it's so-so, it's meh. And, really fruit should be something that you want to eat. You should walk up to the fridge or the counter and go, I want that, versus I should eat that because it's good for me.
I can tell you the fruit that we brought home from this morning has not lasted very long. It's not going to be there very long. All right, one last question for you. If Ela Family Farms was going to pick one of its fruits to be, if you guys had a company baseball team, what fruit would you use as your team's mascot? What's the most intimidating fruit that you have on the farm?
Most intimidating fruit? Gosh, that's a good question. I'm going to have to think on this one.
I'm seeing plums, there's pears, there's apples.
We might be the Pitmaston pineapples.
Oh, I like
which is
this.
A little heirloom variety apple. It's about the size of a golf ball. And it is intensely flavored, and it does have some pineapple flavors in it, but it's one that when you bite into, that you are eating something
amazing.
And they are just spicy and tart, but in a good way. So we'd be the Pitmaston pineapples instead of the Clingstones.
I hope Dan Simon is listening right now. I hope that we get that logo someday here. Can folks order from you online around the country? How do people find Ela Family Farms?
We have our artisanal processed goods, our jams, fruit butters, dried fruit, etc. online, because those can be shipped. Our fresh fruit, we can ship in season, but like peaches, we have to do second day air. We have to pack them in foam, because I don't know if you've noticed your packages arriving sometimes with maybe the box isn't in pristine condition.
I've seen that before, yes.
With fruit, when we ship it, we want the fruit to get there in pristine condition, so we actually have to use a lot of foam, so it's not cheap. It's really a specialty item, but our jams, fruit butters, applesauce, dried fruits, it's all out of our own fruit. We only sell what we grow. We have the commercial kitchen right on the farm, so it's estate bottled. If you want to go with the winery feel,
nice.
And those are always available online.
Well, we had the luxury. I live about 2.5 miles away, so we just brought our jam and our cider home along with all our fruit, so we didn't have to pack it in foam. Steve, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy morning here to chat with me. Good luck with the rest of the morning here.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right,
it's
thanks.
been fun.
right, everyone, welcome back. Guess what? As promised, here is my good friend Dan Simon back with a Studio Simon Stumper about a brand that he himself created. And in the time since we last talked, how have you been?
I have been peachy. Thank you
Oh,
for
perfect.
asking. So let's stay on that peach topic and get into this. It's not surprising that a baseball team in Georgia would go with a peach themed brand identity. You know, after all, Georgia is the peach state. The Peach Bowl has been played in Atlanta since 1968. Ty Cobb, who was born in Narrows, Georgia, was nicknamed the Georgia Peach. But Georgia is not the only state that can claim a connection to peaches. Like, here's a Studio Simon appetizer. Do you know what state is #1 in annual peach production?
California.
Yep, that is indeed the case. Now they do have an advantage of being a very large state, but they're #1. Did you know that Georgia is not #2?
I do. South Carolina is #2.
Correct.
I didn't have that information available offhand, but I discovered it as I was researching the article for sportslogos.net on this very brand. So the reason I know those facts is because of this brand. And I learned something about America through minor league baseball, which is the whole point of everything that we do.
Yep, and that's the only reason I knew those facts was because of this brand identity. I was not much of a peach scholar previous to this this brand identity development. So let's get into that. Our Studio Simon Stumper today, which will present you with 2 truths and a lie, and asks, which of these states did not have a professional baseball team named the Peaches? Was it A, Delaware, B, Illinois, or C, New Mexico?
Oh boy. If I'm not mistaken, the town of Rockford is in Illinois, and they have the Rockford Peaches, who were famously portrayed in the movie A League of Their Own. So I'm going to eliminate Illinois as one of the truths because I believe the Rockford Peaches played in Illinois. So that leaves New Mexico or Delaware.
Would you say that with those 2 left as per your sussing, as the 2 choices left, would you consider them both to be surprising when it comes to association with peaches?
I do. I would not. Let me tell you where my head is and where my sussing is happening here. Delaware feels like, New Jersey is the Garden State. And a lot of people don't know this about New Jersey, but, there's all sorts of great produce that comes out of New Jersey. Like New Jersey corn is the best corn in the world. I don't want to hear anyone argue with me, otherwise. It's just a simple fact. Jersey tomatoes, amazing. Blueberries out of New Jersey, so good. And so Delaware is very close to New Jersey. And so the idea that there would be like fresh produce out of Delaware that would inspire a name for a team is not that far-fetched. However, I grew up very close to Delaware, and I've never heard of, I don't recall ever hearing about a team in Delaware that was named for the Peaches. Because I don't recall ever having heard of a team in Delaware called the Peaches, I'm inclined to go with that as the lie. And New Mexico is so outrageous as a possibility that there must be a reason that you threw that in there. It's not just a decoy. There must have been a team called the Peaches in New Mexico. So that's going to be my sussing. Lots of great produce, I'm sure, comes out of Delaware, but I don't recall that there was ever a team called the Peaches. So I'm going to say that Delaware was the lie.
You were so close, Paul.
Damn it.
Okay, so here we go. You will probably be surprised to know that the state flower of Delaware is the peach blossom. And the reason for that is it was named the state flower back in 1895 because of Delaware's reputation as the peach state. Now we're talking about 1895. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Beginning in the 1830s or thereabouts, Delaware became one of the leading producers of peaches in the country until a blight called the Yellows, destroyed the majority of the orchards in the late 1800s. Now, today, they're still grown in Delaware, but not nearly to the extent that they were produced back in the 1800s. So New Mexico is the lie and the correct answer. Although at one point, it was back, when I say at one point, back in 1629, it was listed as a crop there. Listed on what, I don't know, but at one point there was peach growing going on in New Mexico. So that, and your sussing, your initial sussing was spot on. The Rockford Peaches are indeed the team that was in Illinois. Oh, by the way, let's back up a second. The team in Delaware was the Wilmington Peaches in 1896 in the Atlantic League. Then there was also, only lasted one season, 1898, the Wilmington Peach Growers in the Atlantic Association. And then from 1907 to 1908, again, the Wilmington Peaches in the Tri-State League. So yeah, we're going back a while there, but peaches used to be a thing in Delaware.
Weird that I never made it to a game.
Well, they still grow peaches in California, and there was a team in Marysville, California in 1950. There was a team from 1947 to 1955. So as opposed to a bunch of these one-offs, the Spartanburg, South Carolina Peaches. And then the team that lasted the longest, named the Peaches, 50 years on and off between 1904 and 1903, was the Macon, Georgia Peaches.
Dan, you just said between 1904 and 1903.
1904 and 1983. I'm sorry if I was going back in time there.
You want to just restate it? I'll just edit it in.
No, I am an imperfect individual, and I own up to that. If I misspoke, I apologize. I will try to do better.
Oh boy.
Lastly, I just want to note that peaches are low in calories and fat, high in fiber, rich in essential vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Plus, they are a natural diuretic and aid in kidney and bladder detoxification. So they're not only good, they're good for you.
Wow, we got to drop in the more you know here. This is that's important information. Dan, thank you as always. I'm ashamed to have missed this one, given that it involves a state so close to where I grew up. But I learned something about America, that Delaware was once the peach state. How about that? I appreciate this fantastic brand that you created, which has now has me leaning towards getting more gear for an Atlanta Braves affiliate, which is just not something that I'm, inclined to do. But, that's the magic of minor league baseball branding, right?
Speaking of that, I was recent communications with our mutual friend and podcaster, Anna Di Tommaso, about starting to think about the itinerary for next year's Hefapalooza, road trip, which you call, let's hear what you call it again.
I've called it different things before, but I think I called it the Anadana Palooza, something like that. But our 2-day weekend road trip.
And one of the things that I had mentioned to her as a possibility is a Georgia road trip where we go to the aforementioned Columbus Clingstones and the Rome Emperors.
I like that idea very much. It would be a Dan Simon extravaganza. See 2 of your popular new brands.
I don't often get to see the teams I work for play, just because they're all around the country and I can't travel all around the country. I'm too busy creating brands here and I've got to be at work. So the chance to see 2 of them in one weekend fell swoop would be, I think, pretty cool.
Well, and you know that one of my favorite things to do when we go on these road trips and we go to a place where you have created the brand is I like to just march around and point to you and say, "Do you know who that is? Do you know who he is?" And we go into the team store and I say, he created that logo that you're about to buy a t-shirt of.
Paul is very proud of being able to embarrass his friends.
One of my all-time favorites was the time at the Louisville Bats game, and the attractive young woman went by all decked out in Savannah Bananas gear, and I got to facilitate an introduction just because I thought that was funny.
And there's photos to prove it.
There
So
sure are. Dan, thank you as always for all that you do for everyone in minor league baseball, and I love the idea of going to a couple of games in Georgia next year. 2 Braves affiliates, though. Well,
I forgot to mention that they're both Braves affiliates. So,
but they're Braves affiliates, both of whom, thanks to your handiwork, abandoned their Braves moniker, their parent club nickname. So they're 2 former Braves teams that are no longer called Braves. So I'll at least have that as consolation.
yes, not just consolation, you should celebrate it.
It is cause for celebration. Dan, thank you. We'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it. Bye, Paul.